Hey guys, welcome back to Highlighted Podcast. My name is Brian Pantuj, and I got Rocky Sanchez with me today, or Raquel. Yeah. We just want to go ahead and thank everybody who's watching and who continue to watch our podcast. You may notice we're in a new setup today. All for the glory of God. You know, we have a new setup, new table, and everything like that. So we thank you for all those who have been supporting and watching and just, giving their opinions to all the polls we've been doing and everything like that. Today, we're going to be pretty much talking about a topic called spiritual shift, and it regards to the question we got from one of our Instagram polls from one of our viewers, and it's the question was, why do so many young adults leave their church in their 20s? And we kind of wanted to talk about this specific topic because I think it's a really good one, and I think that it's been a problem for a while. Rocky, I don't know if you have anything on that specific topic you want to start us off with.
Yeah. Well, it's not only in your generation, it's been happening for a long time now. And there's so many reasons why the youth could be leaving. While I was just praying and just researching, it's just amazing how many reasons why, kids leave in their 20s.
Yeah.
So I think we won't go over all of them because we don't have that much time.
Yeah.
But
we'll do our best.
We'll do our best. It'll get good.
Yeah. So just kind of going into that. So I guess one of the main things regarding that topic, I think one of the main reasons why I feel like a lot of people leave the church in their 20s or young adults in that case, I think it has a lot to do with, how the culture is of the world. I think I've noticed that the culture of the world is like a really fast-paced environment, and I think sometimes we like to conform to that environment, and from experience, I know that a lot too. I don't know if you've had experience personally yourself in that, or at least to that part of the world.
Yeah, I think we all get lost sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know I've done my share of not physically leaving the church, but physically doing what I wanted to do, chose what,
Yeah.
I think we all have bits and pieces of experiencing the world.
Yeah.
In my case, I never actually left the church, which is it was hard because I remember my dad honoring me in front of the whole church. And I'm like, Daddy, no. Like I was in my stuff. I was in my mess, right?
Yeah.
So I think it was super just humbling because, we were talking about accountability too. And I didn't really have that in that season. So I had a group of friends and we wouldn't make the best choices,
Yeah.
So I think I'm one of those that kind of stepped out, but was still in.
Yeah.
So I didn't really leave. But
unfortunately, I don't share that same experience. Yeah. Although I wish I would have shared that experience. Personally, I did not.
Yeah.
My parents, my dad was a real strict Christian. Mm-hmm. He would say, we need to go to church. As long as you live in my house, you follow my rules.
Same,
which, I accepted. It makes sense, right? Because I didn't pay rent. I was a kid, whatever. And so I would come to church, but it was never really because I wanted to. It was never because I felt like I really truly wanted to be here. It just felt more like of a job, an extra chore. And I think, tying back into the question, I think that's probably one of the reasons why many of those young adults leave is because when they get to that age, they kind of have that freedom. They have their own job.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, and so and that's kind of what happened to me too. As soon as I got my own job, was making my own money, I told my dad, you know what, I don't want to go to church. I don't like the church. Mm-hmm. And in that time, what could he really do?
Yeah.
He just had to kind of, I was at that point, I was an adult, Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of what happened is I kind of got lost track into the world. I seen everybody was worried about getting their college degrees, getting their career running, making money. Mm-hmm. And all that stuff is really, it really grabs at your attention a lot. It did for me.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm glad I was able to see behind it. But, and I think that's personally one of the main things what a lot of youth go through now.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think Me and my sister were talking today about baby boomers who are raising us, or Gen X,
Yeah.
and they were very strict about church and putting the rules, and a lot of the times maybe there wasn't the why, but why?
Yeah.
Why do we have to do this?
Right. Wow,
Maybe in the back of our mind we knew, but it was never fully explained.
Yeah.
And I also thought this week, even as a child, how children need to be told the why. People, the children we need to go deeper with our children.
Yeah.
That's where they get rooted, right? That means no sugarcoating the Bible stories.
Yeah,
saying, Jesus died because he loved us.
Yeah.
No, show them a video. Show them how it was. Show them, explain about the Pharisees and how they hated him, But the Bible says, because they hated me, they will hate you.
Right.
We need to really ground our babies so that when they do hit that age, they're like, they have the fear of the Lord, right? They're afraid to run
from it.
I think that's what happened to me, because my parents, thank God, they didn't really sugarcoat things. So in the back of my mind, even when I was in the world for a minute, I always knew, oh my gosh, but I don't want to go to hell. Oh my goodness, what am I doing? Like, your spirit, it does not feel comfortable in these environments, right? So I think as a child you need to be grounded, and
from that point of age, I think I agree with that too, because like you said, show us that why of things. Because I feel like and that's the thing that a lot of people say. You can see on social media, people say like a lot of people know of God, but they don't know God, and I think that's true, because like my dad, he would at our old church, we would have to every Friday prep a verse, you read it, and so I would read the verse, but I didn't know what it meant. I wasn't really into it, It was kind of just, instead of really getting into the Word of God, it was just reading the Word of God. And even then, my dad, he showed me we watched a movie about what happens when the rapture comes. It was a really traumatic movie at my age.
Yeah, they would always put that on for me.
And so, and I feel like that's, for me, one of the things is I've always respected, Christianity and religion and everything like that. But I never took it serious, because like you said, it's that lack of not showing why we do it. We were told to go to church, right? And then I even had the misconception of thinking, you're going to go to heaven if you're a good person, if you do good things. And I think nobody really explained to me, even in church here where we're at right now, Lucid Valle, it was kind of my own, not wanting to submit to the rules and stuff. Well, I didn't take it serious, and so I always thought, well, I'm going to go to heaven because I'm a good person. I don't steal, I don't lie, I don't, and it's that's not the truth,
Oh man, if there's a lot of you thinking like that.
It's not, you got to change your thinking, because that's not what, your works is not what's going to save you. It's your faith,
Exactly.
And even then, it says in the Bible, faith alone will not save you either. You need to work that faith, otherwise you have dead faith, So, that's personally me.
Wow. And you're hitting so many topics of the prodigal son. This week I was reading about the prodigal son, and I even asked my husband, I'm like, I really want to throw in biblical perspective, So he's like, well, what about the prodigal son? He left to go explore, right?
Yeah.
So you have the youngest son who was rebellious, and then you have the religious son, right? So in the story, the rebellious son told his dad, give me the inheritance. I want to, he was eager to leave, right?
Yeah.
But in order for him to leave, he needed the blessing of the finance part, right?
Right.
So that shows you that he was impatient. He was impatient. How many of the ones who are leaving might be impatient? Maybe they're like, well, I'm not getting the blessing.
Right.
I don't understand this. Why am I here?
Yeah.
I want to start my own life. I want to experience. I want to explore, right?
Yeah.
And
it's that curiosity, I think.
Curiosity, definitely.
Yeah, it really pulls away.
We're humans, right?
Yeah.
But then, so the dad agreed and said, okay, well, here's your part. Go do what you want to do. He never really try to keep him. And I feel like that's the Lord's heart too.
Yeah.
He never really, no, please stay. You have to stay. Don't go, Brian. Don't leave.
Yeah, he won't beg you. He won't force you.
Yeah.
No.
So that was the, what Jesus was trying to explain there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then he left, he came back, and then you have the other son. If you read the whole story, I'm not going to do that. But, the other son, when he saw his brother come back, he was like, but Dad, like, I worked for you.
Yeah.
I was there. You never blessed me with a sacrifice when my friends and I were hanging out. Like,
yeah.
I worked for you. And just like you said, Brian,
Yeah.
It's not by works.
No, it's not.
And just like you, I thought that. I thought, Lord, like, I have to serve you in the church, especially because my dad was a pastor. I have to serve you.
Yeah.
It's by my works that you're going to love me.
Yeah.
And then my friend was like, stop it. He doesn't love you because of what you do. He loves you because who you are.
Exactly.
And when our young ones figure that out, that he loves you for you,
yeah,
then they could start a relationship with Christ.
I think that's really good advice, because one of the things I think is like you said, I think that's where we start comparing ourselves to other people's life. And the same thing with the prodigal son. I think, I think even the Bible says, like, the angels in heaven, they kind of chant, they start to in celebration when one sinner repents, as opposed to 100, righteous man. And I think that's the thing when people compare, is like, we see this attention that the prodigal son gets when they return, and it's like, we shouldn't be focusing on that. It's not like, that's, I think, where that's kind of emotion by man comes in, because we allow ourselves from the attention that they're getting to get to us, and I think that's not the right way to go about it, and like, if you focus your spiritual life on everything you do, and you don't focus on really truly living like how Jesus did when he was on earth, I mean, I think that's kind of already going the wrong path, and I think that's, like I said, it's really good advice for anybody who's starting their Christian life right now, their spiritual walk, is don't try to compare yourself with people, because I've done it too. I made that mistake. Like, you start pointing where you're at and opposed to where somebody else is at, and they might be at a higher stage in their life, but they've probably been in more submission than you have. They probably obeyed more. They probably allowed themselves to be used by God a lot more, and you probably haven't done that. So when you start to compare yourself, I think that's where you kind of start letting your emotions really drive you a lot. And it gets really bad,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's, as youth sometimes, and that's, kind of coming into accountability, is like, that's where we really need somebody to kind of hold us accountable in what we do.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we're led by emotion that we're not able to really see clearly what we're supposed to see. And
I think later in the story it says that the son who left, he left far. And sometimes we leave far because we don't want our family in our business. We don't want the church in our business. We want to do what we want to do. And we don't want the accountability, because accountability, it exposes our sin. It exposes who we really are. Because sometimes when we look in the mirror, we're not going to call out our sin.
No, we're not.
No, like, we're going to be like, no, I'm okay. Like, this is okay. But yeah, he left far. And I think sometimes we tend to leave far, because we don't want people telling us what to do. We just want to live in our sin and, but yeah, sometimes it's not even sin of why these kids are leaving, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot more.
It goes a lot deeper.
It goes a lot deeper. I think a lot of kids will say, I left the church, but I still love Christ.
Yeah.
I still love him.
Yeah.
But where's the community? God calls us to community. Again, accountability, right?
Right.
How can we grow in our giftings if we're not with each other?
Right.
But I think they leave because of that. So yeah, there's a lot of reasons.
Yeah. I think a lot too is like misconception that comes from the world is like when you never really experience walking in this, type of walk, one thing I've always heard, especially when I was like, I stopped walking in my walk with God. A a lot of the outside opinion, the outside perspective of somebody who's a non-believer would say, the church is filled with hypocrites,
Yes.
oh, this person goes to church, but they do this person does this. And I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions, is that when you're a Christian, you're supposed to be this perfect guy, perfect woman. And reality, we're not. People think when you start walking with God, they ask you the questions, well, why does this happen? Why does this bad stuff happen? And I think that's kind of the things we're not supposed to be doing, because it's like, in the Bible, it was never promised to us that we would never suffer.
Yes.
Never, Yeah. It's kind of one of those things that if you don't truly look into, you won't know. And that misconception, when you allow it from different people all over the world telling you, it gets you. It got to me, know? And so I think that's another thing that adds on to that, big question of why so many people leave the church in their young age, is that they're new, their mind is fresh to this new world, When you're 18, when you're 21, 18, you probably can drive. You can go out and do this, that. When I'm an adult, when you're 21, drinking, it's accessible to you. Drinking, smoking, all this stuff. And our minds are still fresh, and I think that's why our minds kind of jump into it so quickly when it comes to that stuff,
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Brian, what about, have you ever been tempted to leave church? You mentioned that you did for a season, right?
Yeah, I think it was kind of the, the fear of missing out. Yeah. I think is one of the biggest things that tempted me in my life. Is I would see, like I said, I'd see my friends and from high school, they go clubbing, they go do this, that. We'd go to sideshows in Oakland, all this stuff. And I feel like, and I'm just at home, like, going to church, and, at the time I wasn't fully rooted, I was kind of like, my foundation was like pebbles. It wasn't a really sturdy concrete thing. And so that tempted me a lot, because I would see like they're having so much fun, parties every Saturday. I've gone to parties, I've done all this stuff, and I feel like that fear of missing out really does take a toll on you, because you start to see what other people do, and you start to say, well, why can't I do that? Why do I have to, quote unquote, tie myself down for a religion? And that's the thing too, is like, before I would see it as a religion, I wouldn't see it as a relationship with God. It was just purely religion. And so that caused me to leave the church. I was gone from the church for 2 years, and it wasn't until my dad, kind of, he forced me to call Pastor Salmeron, to ask him for, like, if I could help with the media, because I'm somebody that really enjoys media.
Yeah.
And so I went and I did it. And Pastor told me to talk to Ricky. He's the head of media at the church, at our church. And so I met Ricky the first time I ever met him. I met him, and, he was a good guy. He was showing me everything, but because it wasn't me submitting fully to like that job, it became a kind of a consistent habit where I would say, oh, I can't come in, or I won't be going, or sometimes I wouldn't even show up.
Yeah.
And Ricky decided to put me down, which was needed, because it really opened my eyes, because I felt hurt. And in that moment, I wanted to run back to my old habits. I wanted to run back to what the world was offering me. And it was a really time where I kind of prayed to God. First time I prayed to God, and like, where it was like a serious prayer. It wasn't just my simple, God bless my life, God, it was something really intimate with God. And, I just felt like the need to stay. And I would reach out to Ricky, and sometimes he wouldn't respond. I'm not trying to put Ricky on blast, but I get it. I get it, because he told me once that, the people he's putting on, to take care of a role, you need to be committed to it. You need to be in submission for it. And so it wasn't until Ricky eventually, a few months later, reached out to me, and I was still hurt. Yeah. He reached out to me and explained to me why that happened, and he, told me I would have a second chance. And I think that second chance is what really, I think that was the door being open to me staying with the church, staying with God, and, being there. Because after that, I mean, I've been at church for almost 2 years now. Yeah. And it's been a really big blessing to my life. It's changed my life.
So what do you think has really changed it? Like, do you feel like, have you been able to build up your relationship with God?
100%. Yes.
See? And don't you feel like that makes a difference?
It makes a difference, because I think one thing is, like, in order for that change to happen, one thing I hear a lot of people saying, that the truth hurts, and it does. And we have to be able to hear the truth. Like you said, some people don't like to hear it. They start to run, they get uncomfortable. And we sometimes, when we get uncomfortable, we run. Yeah. And so I think that's one of the things that needed to happen, is the truth needed to be put in front of me. Yeah. I needed to accept the consequences of my actions and really submit to God. And in doing that, my relationship with God although it might not be at some level as like many other people you might see out, in the world, it's still, I think my relationship with God has gotten so much better. I've known him in many ways. I've got to trust him in many ways, and I recommend anybody out there, if they really want to truly expand their relationship with God, it comes from submission. 100%
for sure.
submission. And yeah,
Jude talks about that. He talks about how staying grounded in your faith, people are going to come and, tell you things and want to shift your thoughts and your beliefs and your faith, right?
100%, yeah.
But when you're grounded, it makes a difference. And the way to be grounded is spending time with the Father, right? Yeah. I think if we ask a lot of these young adults, who left, how was your relationship with Christ?
Yeah.
Did you have one?
Yeah.
I think it all goes back to that, right? I mean, we could talk about hours and hours, because I have a list. I mean, we could be here for hours.
Yeah.
And we could talk about why they are leaving. But if we reverse it and talk about how can we keep them
from leaving? How
did Jesus keep the church?
Yeah.
When he walked on this earth, what was his behavior like with these people? What were his characteristics like
towards them,
and I know I'm a hard person, right? But like you said, hey, some people need that, right?
Yeah.
But I think we also need a lot of love. We need that trust. We need to know that our leaders are not going to condemn us, or they're not going to condemn us or judge us, okay? They're going to love us. They're going to help us and guide us and nurture us, because that's what Jesus did. He sat with the poor, he healed so many in love. But he was also in constant communication with his Father. So if we as leaders are in constant communication with the Father, and we learn to love these youth and accept what they want, because this is, the message doesn't change, but the method, how we deliver the message, it changes, right? So we need to learn how to keep these youth, how to keep them hungry, what do they need? Do you want to talk about politics? Do you want to talk about the hard questions? Are we not giving enough of that? Are we not, are we scared of their questions? I remember when I was leading the youth, we would do a koinonia night.
Oh yeah, I heard of those.
Remember? Yeah,
I was not part of it because I was still young, but I've heard of it.
But we did those nights, and what it was is we would all sit in a circle, and I would have them write on a piece of paper the hard questions. I said, you know what? This is your time to ask questions that you would never ask face to face, like your mom or your dad or your leaders. So I would have to pray. I'm like, Lord, give us wisdom how to answer these questions.
Because you don't want somebody to say the wrong thing.
Yeah, but you also don't want to always put your perspective or your opinion, because again, you want to put biblical facts there too. So I'm like, Lord, like let me, but so we would get these questions and open them, and we would all answer them together. And it was such a beautiful night, So how, so you is Gen Z, you're young, you're still in your young adult stage, right?
20 years and young. Yeah.
How old are you?
20.
Yes. So you're like right there.
Yeah.
So what would you like to see more of are we lacking anything? Like, is there anything lacking?
That's a really good question, because I kind of have like if I had a list, it'd go down.
Yeah, it's okay. I mean, I think we also need your guys' perspective of, because it's kind of like like I said again, I'll say it again. The message is the same, but the method, how we deliver the message is gonna change.
Yeah, over time
and if we're not moving with you guys are going to move away from us.
Right.
And that's not what we want.
No, of course. And I think, to answer your question, one thing I kind of see, like, at least in this generation, not the whole generation, because there are really good people that have, from what one can see, you can never know one's true relationship with God. That's between you and God. But something I always, even tell my friends, and my friends always hear it from me, there's three things I always say. one thing I always tell them is read your word, because a lot of people can claim to know God, but if you don't know his word, how can you claim to know God? It's even said in John, I forgot the verse, but it says that, God is the word and the word is God, you know? So if we go about, in God's name, doing everything like that, but we never take the time to really read the Bible, I wouldn't say it's fair to say God, because, this is your meal. This is what's keeping your hunger, satisfied, That's one thing. Two is I always tell them, like, I'm a person that I really like to advocate for discipleship. I think that's one of the most important things, because something I noticed too in this generation, and I think this is where emotion comes in, is, we focus so much on an encounter, but we don't focus on post-encounter. What happens after the encounter? You can have an encounter with God, but if you don't supply that, if you don't guide that, what's that going to happen? It'll be a person seeking that feeling of the encounter.
Yeah.
And so I think discipleship is something that maybe sometimes we lacking about, is like, when do we take the time to really sit down and read the word? When do we, maybe some people do, some people don't.
Yeah.
When there's a Bible verse or a sermon that your pastor or whoever's preaching, do you take the time to really listen? Do you take the time to analyze it? Do you take the time to study? Maybe not. And I think that's kind of one of the things that we lack in, is like the lack of discipleship, and that's, I think discipleship is where, you kind of start getting grounded and get your foundation built.
Yeah.
I mean, here at Luz del Valle, I think once you get baptized, you start taking these classes, the eco classes, and that's kind of your discipleship. You start to know of the word, you start to know the rules of the church and all this stuff. And I think that's important. I wouldn't say it's above all, but I think that's one of the biggest stepping stones you need to take to start going in that right path.
Yeah.
And that's, what I think we lack in, where I think we need more of to keep the youth from leaving.
Yeah.
So
we talked about accountability. I think you and I off the camera, we talked a bit about accountability, where you choose like an equal person to hold you accountable throughout the week, right?
Yeah.
But I also truly believe in armor bearers. Like
armor bears?
Wow, really? Y'all don't know about armor bears? Like, that's a whole other podcast right there. But it's biblical. But basically, armor bearer is choosing someone above. So we talked about equal, like a friend.
Yeah.
Let's keep each other accountable.
Yeah.
Let's try to iron sharpen iron. Let's sharpen each other, right?
Yeah.
But then there's, say, Brian, you tell my husband, Juan, I want to be under you. I want to learn the Bible.
Yeah.
I want to learn the whys.
Yeah.
I want to learn how to grow in my faith.
Yeah.
He's older. He's wiser. He knows the word.
Yeah.
So you go to someone like that, right? I think we need to open those doors again.
Yeah.
When I led the youth, I even bought a book about armor bearers. Like, we did a whole study about it. And I try to really, really tell them, you need an armor bearer. Right now, you guys are not under me like my leaders. You're my armor bearers. I don't know how serious they took that, if they understood all of that.
Yeah.
But just, telling the young adults, choose someone who could guide you, and don't be afraid of it.
Yeah.
If it's an hermana or an hermano, a sister or brother from church, grab a hold of them. Yeah. It also looks like someone sitting next to pastor.
Yeah.
Pastor, show me your ways.
Yeah.
Show me, how to pray. Show me how to have compassion for these people.
That's good.
So you're not alone anymore.
Yeah.
You're making the choice. The leaders are not going to beg you to be under them.
No,
that looks
won't.
Weird, right?
Yeah.
Brian, you have to come. I have to teach you this, No, like, we're not going to beg you to do that.
Yeah.
It has to be taught. Because right now it looks like you knew nothing about that, but it needs to be taught.
Yeah.
And then it needs to be acted upon.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, I'm learning about armor bearers, and now I want to go find who I'm gonna get fed from.
And I think that's something that's really overlooked, because I would say, at least at our church, Luz del Valle, for me personally, when I look at the church, I can see a lot of elders, a lot of adults who I know I'm maybe not 100% sure, because I don't know that, but I can guarantee like a 75-80% chance that they're spiritually mature. There's somebody that if you were to go and ask them a question or ask for guidance, or like you said, be under them, they would say yes. But like you said, that doesn't fall on you guys as the leaders. That falls on us, that we overlook that. And I think like one of the reasons why we overlook, and it's something that I made the mistake of doing when I started my first, my path with Jesus, was that, on social media, I would see all these people with such anointing and everything. And I would like kind of focus looking towards them, even though they didn't know me, I knew of them. Right. But I would look at them and I'd be like, wow, this and that. And I just feel like that same anointing is in our church. It's in our elders. We just choose to overlook it. We choose to ignore it because why? Maybe because those elders there, they don't have a platform. They don't have this following.
Wow, that's good. And those ones on social media, those influencers and all of that, they're not tangible. Yeah. You have it in your home church. Yeah. And like you said, you have to look for it. Yeah.
Because you're not going to come and say, come do this with me, come do that.
Yeah, but I mean, my heart, like I'm ready. If there's a young girl who wants to be under my wings, I'm not perfect. No, I make mistakes, but I love Jesus. Right. I love him.
And I think that's the important part too, is like having that love for God, having that desire to really want to follow him, to really pick up your cross and let go of all your things, and I think it's hard to do that. Yeah. It's really hard to submit. I think a lot of youth, tend to go through that a lot. And I hope it's something that as we continue to grow in this, in this age that we're in right now, more youth start to lift up that cross and really start to follow God.
Yeah. I mean, there's a verse where I was trying to ask my husband, where's that verse? Where the younger's connected, the older's connected to the younger generation.
I was just talking, I was like, not just talking, but somebody, Danny from SDO, we were just talking about the verse, how the younger generation and the older generation kind of complement each other because like it's the young generation's energy and spirit and it's the older generation's wisdom. Yeah, that was really good.
Well, it's like sitting down with your grandfather or your grandma. Mm-hmm. If you sit, even if you go visit an elderly home, we used to visit elderly homes when I was in Bible college, and we would just sit with these elderly people and hear their stories and their wisdom, and you're just like, wow, they know so much. Yeah. So sit with the elderlies before you want to leave, like the prodigal son. Go sit with a baby boomer, right? I mean, go sit with your grandpa, get some wisdom.
And they carry a lot of wisdom. We just don't seek for it. We really don't, And even if it's not them, your Bible, a lot of wisdom in it. A lot of wisdom.
We got to be grounded and keep reading the word, even if you don't understand it.
Yeah. Wow. I think this conversation has been going really well. And, one thing I want to ask you, Raquel, is do you think like being the daughter of a pastor, do you think that took an effect on you not leaving either? Do you think that's something that not really kept you grounded, but more of how you would be seen or perceived by your father's church, the people around you and all that stuff? Do you think that?
Oh, definitely. I mean, like I said, I wanted to run. Sometimes I still want to run. I'm like, let's go. But yeah, that is definitely what kept me, because I'm a daddy's girl. I love my dad. I love what he does. I believe in his ministry. And even in my mess, I always cheered him on. And I'm like, I'm not going to leave the church. Yeah. I'm not going to do it.
It's like that supportiveness.
It's the support. I have to support him. I have to be grounded there. And I remember Danny Lima once told me, Rock, I admire you. I'm like, really? Why? I'm like, tell me. Because you've been through so much and even embarrassing moments, and you stayed at the church. Yeah. I'm like, I know, huh? Yeah. I mean, so there's, once I got better and healed from a lot, I would preach, and coming down the altar, these people would come to me and be like, I never really liked you. I thought you were this and that. But
that's some real honesty.
Yeah. But like hearing you preach, wow. I mean, the things I've been told in church, Brian, like we had a prophet who put my family on the altar and they were saying some shady stuff to me in front of everyone. And I'm like, oh, Lord. So yes, there's been times where I just wanted to run and hide, but whatever, God kept me there for a reason.
I think that's like a true testament to, one, your character, and two, to your relationship with God, because I feel like one of the main things we do is when we're put on that spotlight, we get uncomfortable and we start to run, we start to hide, we, and for example, we leave the church.
Yeah.
And I get the feeling. I do. Not saying I think it's right. I don't think it's right. But I think one of that main spotlight is that when we're put in the spotlight, we get uncomfortable, and sometimes it's okay to get uncomfortable. Sometimes it's okay to be, not at ease all the time, because that's where you start to kind of realize everything you're trying to do in your own strength, it's not going to work. And that's the time where you got to start relying on God, praying to him and saying, well, you know what, this situation happened, but I'm going to keep following you, because at the end of the day, we're not coming to church for the church. I'm not coming for you or for, the pastor or leaders. You're coming because it's what's said in the Bible to, have community, have fellowship, love your neighbor and everything like that. So I think that's one of the main things we need to put our focus to is having that, having that, that ability to get uncomfortable and not to run when we get uncomfortable.
I think Vanessa, she's my best friend, and I feel like we were grounded together. Her and I never left the church. But even in our mess, even in our seasons of life, she would come over my house and we would have 5 a.m. prayers together. So talking about accountability, that's accountability. We were young. I was still living at home. And we would pray for like an hour, 5 a.m. She would drive to me. That's a friend too, right? So I feel like even those moments, someone once told me, sometimes you're not praying for the moment, but you're praying for the future. And I believe those prayers really helped my future, not to stay in the world, not to keep doing those things, but to make me who I am today.
And I think that's one of the key things too, like to kind of stop you from leaving, is getting those type of friends, reaching out to people. Don't be afraid, because when I came to church, it was really awkward because it's been a while since I've seen everybody. And so I didn't have that trust to talk to anybody. And I'm, thankful to God that, because I pray to God for friends that would help me on my walk too. And, I joined the worship team, and, my friends, Angel and Luis, the twins, and Alan, they reached out to me. And that's kind of where this relationship as brothers, we have this bond where we can hold each other accountable. There's no fear of because why I'm saying this is not because I want to hurt you. It's not because I want to say I'm better to you. I'm saying it because I love you, and I think having those relationships too helps. Learn to not rely on it, but learn to use it when it's available to you.
For sure.
And I think, like you had that relationship with Vanessa, I have that same relationship with, these guys that I can really call my brothers. Like I would consider them my brothers, because it's something we've been through so much. We have that boldness to tell each other, hey, I think this and that, or you know what, I think in this situation, this and that. And I think that's beautiful to have. And I think if you really seek for that, if you really desire that to help you on your walk, pray to God. He'll give it to you. He'll give it to you. But wow, conversation was really good. And we just, I think we're going to go ahead and just wrap it up this episode. Thank you guys for watching Highlighted Podcast. This podcast, it's not just about my opinion, her opinion, or Don's opinion. It's about getting the perspective of others too. And so Rocky had this really great idea in which we went out and reached out to, local people in our community from different churches who are young adults. And we asked them 2 questions. And Rocky, if you want to read the questions.
So the questions that we asked them were, have you ever thought of leaving your church? If so, why? What made you or what's making you stay at your local church?
And so we are going to go ahead and play a few clips from a couple of the youth that we reached out to, and we just hope you enjoy what they have to say.
I personally have thought about leaving my church many times when I was younger. My mom would always force me to go every Sunday. I had no option is what I always thought and said to myself. As of now, I grew in many ways, which one was my relationship with the Lord, who kept me at church for a reason. I know I have a purpose there, I just still don't know what it is, but I slowly have signs that the Lord has sent me so far, and I'll continue to go till I'm ready to serve the Lord the way He's always wanted me to. I always tell people that I'm sorry if the church has hurt you, but that wasn't the Lord, so continue to look for Him, guys. The Lord is the best person you can have in your life.
I definitely have thought about leaving my church before. I
was in a season where I valued another relationship more than my relationship with God. And I remember my pastors taking notice of this, and they had to talk to me and, explain to me that I had to be set down for some reasons that, I knew about and I knew that were wrong. But myself, just being so angry at them, I decided that I wanted to leave because, I didn't feel wanted in the church anymore because of what was going on. But then I started to realize, my heart wasn't being in the right place, because if I wanted to serve God, I have to serve him, with the whole heart. And so I just thank God so much, because I know that I realized that my relationship with him mattered more. And, I wasn't able to grow spiritually, because not only did the person hold me back, but I was also holding myself back from being able to grow spiritually. And because of the decision I made, to end things with that person, I'm able to grow and, be able to serve God wholeheartedly.
To be completely honest, I have never thought of leaving my church, simply because I feel like the Lord has placed me there. And I love it. My family loves it. We feel loved at Shiloh. And I love that whenever I go to church, I have good spiritual friends to come to and, to worship together. And I just know that in my heart, I have a calling from the Lord to stay there for as long as the Lord intends me to stay, And what is making me stay at my local church is, different people have different motivations for going to church. Some go because they enjoy being there. Some go for the spiritual nourishments. Some go for the sermons, for the music, and etc. But the main thing for me is that I was able to find true community here at Shiloh. And I currently, I sing at a worship team at Shiloh. And I have found good spiritual leaders, that have helped me along the way. I love what I do. I love worshiping the Lord. And I'm just grateful for having people like that who can just help me along the way, Because it says in his word, that it's important for us to be in community, It says in Romans 15:6, it says, "Then all of you can join together with one voice, giving praise and glory to God, the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ." So it's important that we have this desire to grow closer to God, and that's the main reason to attend to any church, whether you go, whatever church you go attend to, that should be the main reason, to have this desire to grow closer to God and, a community of faith, and I'm thankful for that.
No creo que alguna vez haya pensado en dejar de asistir a la iglesia a la que voy. Y sé que se debe mucho a mi forma de pensar, que es clara y centrada en Cristo, ¿sabes? Me refiero a que mi enfoque no está en las personas, en que tengan que ser de cierta forma especial o perfectas, sino que mi enfoque está en Cristo, en qué es lo que tienes para mí en este lugar y cómo voy a servirte. Y la otra gran parte por la que sigo yendo a Tres Cruces, a la iglesia a la que voy, se debe a la comunidad y la doctrina. Su comunidad me ha hecho sentir parte de ella desde el primer momento. Me hace sentir en casa, en familia. Se me permite adorar a Dios con libertad, tal y como soy. Y sobre todo usar mis talentos para el Señor. Y aparte la forma en la que enseñan la palabra, en la que te guían, es totalmente bíblico. Entonces, sí, para concluir, creo que me gusta esta iglesia y sigo yendo a esta iglesia porque creemos en que una vida se transforma cuando conoce a Cristo, en crecer y compartir como familia, como cuerpo en Cristo, y compartir este gran mensaje con los demás. Así que estas son mis razones para seguir en la iglesia.
Hello, Angel. Hello.
Have you ever thought of leaving your church?
Yeah,
Why?
because I didn't feel included in the community.
Okay. And what made you, or what's making you stay at your local church?
I'd say I opened up to God, so I prayed about it, and when I prayed about it, I didn't feel right, like right after. Let's say I still felt rejected, and I still felt bad about it. But someone from my church reached out to me, and we talked about it a little bit, and also God really comforted me. I don't remember what I did. I think maybe I read something in the Bible or I heard a podcast or something. But in any way, I really felt comfort and peace from God, and that made me want to stay because I realized there was more to the church than just living.
Okay. Thank you, Angel.